you very much. Mr. President, if you watched 60 Minutes on Sunday, you wouldn't have been surprised that there was a segment relating to prescription drug pricing. Everywhere you turn now, somebody is raising a question about why we're paying so much for prescription drugs and why the cost of these drugs has gone through the roof. Now, we want to encourage research, we want to encourage innovation, and we understand that these are profit-making companies, so we understand we will pay for that. But what we're seeing in terms of the pricing of drugs across America now is inconsistent with any of the history that we've had. It seems as if Pharma believes that if they own a drug, they can charge whatever they care to charge, and no one will question them. And it makes a difference. Blue Cross Blue Shield, the largest health insurer in my state of Illinois, analyzed the cost of care in our state and nearby and said, what is driving the increase in health insurance premiums? The cost of prescription drugs. Even more than the cost of inpatient hospital care. I look at all those big hospitals and all the important work they're doing and expensive procedures they're involved in. All of that cost does not equal the rising cost of prescription drugs. And that's why our health insurance premiums are going up. So it's understandable that more and more of us are talking about this and trying to find practical ways to approach it that might make things better. Can you consider one policy that might have the support of both Democrats and Republicans? The American Association of Retired Persons, the American Medical Association, the American Hospital Association, 88% of Americans, and the Trump administration? What in the world could that be? Well, here it is, a measure that I introduced in 2017 to require pharmaceutical companies to disclose the prices when they do prescription drug advertising. Last year, Senator Chuck Grassley, Republican of Iowa, and I teamed up to pass a measure in the Senate to require price tags on the television ads. We were stopped in conference by a single House Republican. But think about those television ads. What do they tell us in those ads? For 60 minutes, as fast as they can talk, they tell us everything under the sun. If you're allergic to Xarelto, don't take Xarelto. Certain negative things may happen if you take this drug or the other drug. On they go for 60 seconds without stop, and yet they never disclose the price of the drug. I got a call after Senator Grassley and I put our bill in last year from the Secretary of Health and Human Services, Secretary Azar. He decided that he wanted to pick up on our effort and join us. Think about that for a minute. A Republican senator, a Democratic senator, and the Trump administration agreeing on something? Turns out he thinks it's a good idea, and I do too. If we had price disclosure on these ads on television, it might open the eyes of a lot of people as to what it costs. What is the most heavily advertised drug on television today? Humira. Why was Humira invented or discovered? To treat arthritis, particularly psoriatic arthritis. Guess what they discovered? It also had a side benefit they didn't anticipate. You know the little red patch on your elbow? Psoriasis? All of a sudden you take Humira and that little red patch goes away. So if you're watching the ads on television, some of them are about arthritis, but some of them show ladies sitting by swimming pools with flawless skin because they're taking Humira. Very interesting. There's one thing they leave out. Do you know what Humira cost? $5,500 a month. Now, this red patch on my elbow may trouble me when it comes to the swimsuit competition, but I'm not going to spend $5,500 a month to deal with it. I think they ought to have to disclose the price of their drug. And we take their prices. We don't make up the price. The price they declare as pharmaceutical manufacturers, we believe that's the one that should be advertised. On Monday, Senator Grassley and I introduced the bill to codify this rule that the Trump administration's pushing for price disclosure and to ensure its long-term implementation. Happy to have on board with us Senator Lamar Alexander, Republican of Tennessee, Senator King, Independent Democrat from Maine. Disclosing prices in drug ads is a simple step to give patients a break at the pharmacy. We've got to do a lot more. I think this is a good starting point, though. American patients and taxpayers pay the highest prices in the world for most medications. Eli Lilly out of Indianapolis, Indiana. They make a drug called Humalog. It's for diabetes. It's an insulin drug that can cost up to $329 per dose here in the United States. Humalog, insulin, diabetes, $329. What does the same vial of the same drug made by the same company cost in Canada? $38. $329 here, $38 there. In 2017, Canadians could purchase AbbVie's Humira, which I mentioned earlier, for $20,000, and Americans $40,000. The worst part of this price disparity is that American taxpayers are the ones paying to develop these drugs in the first place. It's our tax dollars at the National Institutes of Health which provide the clues and the direction for these companies to take our federally funded research and turn it into a valuable drug, a valuable medical device, and then charge us more than any place in the world. All 210 drugs approved by the Food and Drug Administration between the years 2010 and 2016 received funding from the National Institutes of Health, supported by nearly $40 billion in taxpayers, by U.S. taxpayers each year. I'm all for that, incidentally, funding the NIH and leading to this research, but make no mistake, these breakthrough drugs start at taxpayers' expense at the National Institutes of Health. So American taxpayers get hit twice. We pay for the initial research, which leads to the drug, and then we, of course, pay for the drugs at the highest levels. The heart of the problem is that our system does not function as a free market. There are too many forces at work when it comes to prescription drugs that limit competition. Often, Big Pharma charges as much as they can get away with because they manipulate the patent system to avoid competition. The theory used to be that if you discovered the drug, you could sell it exclusively for, say, 20 years, and then everybody could take your formula, make generic drugs, and there'd be open competition so that the price would go down. It's not how it works. The core issue is that roughly 10% of brand name patent-protected drugs account for 80% of spending in America. The overwhelming prescriptions are for generic drugs, which are affordable drugs. But it turns out that even though 90% of the prescriptions are for generic drugs, they only account for 20% of all the spending. It's that 10% of brand name drugs that account for 80% of all prescription drug spending because they're so expensive. In what other industries does the price of a consumer product increase year after being introduced on the market? Maybe collector artwork or baseball cards, but certainly not when it comes to something that's a life and death commodity like a drug. The point is, I don't believe our founding fathers envisioned a scheme where Sanofi's Lantus insulin, which was approved in the year 2000, would receive 45 additional patents after it was approved by the FDA, providing a massive 37-year monopoly by Sanofi on this insulin product. During that time, the price of insulin has increased from $35 to more than $270 because Sanofi has successfully blocked lower-cost generic competitors. And it's not just Lantus or insulin. Celgene's cancer drug, Revlimid, has been awarded 96 patents, many of which were awarded after the initial FDA approval. As a result, Revlimid effectively has gone 40 years without competition. Same goes for Pfizer's nerve pain drug, Lyrica. You've seen that one advertised on TV, I have. That entered the market in 2004. Lyrica has received 68 patents, including filing more than 24 after initial FDA approval. They are gaming the system to avoid competition to keep their prices high. In fact, the top 12 best-selling drugs in America each have an average of 71 patents. Why do they get a new patent? Because they've decided that instead of a 150 milligram tablet, there'll be a 75 milligram tablet, and they get a new patent. Or they put a new coating on the outside of the pill, or they have a new manufacturing technique. They get a new patent, they have exclusivity in the market for another extended period of time. The top 12 best-selling drugs in America each have an average of 71 patents, and 74% of all new drug patents are for drugs that are already on the market. They're gaming the system. We can and we should reward innovative research so companies can earn a profit for good work and big ideas. But abusive manufacturers should not be allowed to game the government patent system while being shielded from competition. This month, I'm going to give what I call my Pharma Fleece Award. We made this special sign here so that Pharma will know we're talking about them. This month, we're going to give this Pharma Fleece Award to Celgene, Pfizer, and Sanofi for stacking excessive secondary patents to block generic competition. The net result, of course, American consumers pay more for their products. To address this, I introduced legislation last month with Senator Cassidy, Republican from Louisiana, and a medical doctor, called the Remedy Act. Our bipartisan bill reduces incentives for Big Pharma to evergreen. Now, that's a technical term in this application. It's an effort to amass endless quantities of follow-on patents that shield blockbuster drugs from competition from generics. You see, under an act or law known as the Hatch-Waxman Act, when a generic drug manufacturer seeks approval from the FDA, they're routinely blocked by a maze of patents held by the brand name company. The generic company has the option to say whether they think the patents covering a brand name drug are not valid or relevant here. If so, that can trigger a patent infringement lawsuit. When this happens, the FDA issues a 30-month freeze on generic companies' application to hash out the issue. The problem with this 30-month freeze is that it extends the monopoly period for the drug again, and it incentivizes the filing of secondary follow-on patents that may not add to the safety or efficacy of the drug. This automatic 30-month freeze on competition encourages pharma to amass large numbers of secondary patents and block generic companies from putting a drug on the market that would be in competition with their brand name drug. No matter how weak the patent is, how peripheral it may be, like the coating on a pill that I mentioned earlier, it works. For 30 months, it's another delay before there's competition. The Remedy Act, which Senator Cassidy and I have introduced, would restrict this 30-month freeze of FDA approval so that it only applies to primary substance patents. This removes an incentive for brand name manufacturers to continue to game the system by filing excessive follow-on patents and makes it easier for low-cost generic competitors to come to market. Big Pharma is gaming the system at the expense of American patients, at the expense of the American health system, and at our expense when it comes to health insurance premiums. What are we going to do about it? Well, it turns out we happen to be working in a place which makes laws, the United States Senate. We're supposed to take a challenge like this and do something about it. Not just lament the fact that prescription drug pricing is out of control, but actually do something. And lucky me, I serve on the Senate Judiciary Committee, which has authority over many of these issues, particularly when it comes to patent law. There are things we can do as members of the committee to bring down prescription drug pricing. Honestly, if you follow the United States Senate, we can do something other than a nomination, which is all we've done around here for a long, long time. I'm sure the American voters are happy to see us work on nominations, but they'd be much happier if we worked on the high cost of prescription drugs. We have done little or nothing on this subject other than talk about it for the last few months. Senator McConnell, the Republican leader, has really decided not to bring legislation to the floor of the Senate anymore. That is just from the days of yesteryear when we actually debated a bill, offered amendments, had votes. People showed up on the floor because we were doing something. Look at it now. American patients need help from the high drug prices, not more unqualified, divisive nominees, but actually legislation to help American families. What a break it would be if the United States Senate became the United States Senate again. I hope Senator McConnell will allow us to put a bill on the floor of the Senate. It would be a day of great celebration here in the United States Senate. I think Republicans and Democrats would enjoy the opportunity to actually come to the floor, have a debate, pass a bill which may become a law which ends up helping Americans. For many of us, it's the reason we ran for office, and I hope we can return to that very soon. I see my colleague from Texas is here on the floor, and I don't want to take all the time. I ask consent to add into the record at this point a separate statement on a different issue to be placed in a different part of the record.
Without objection.
Thank you.